Hello. So in this quick video, I'm going to give some key tips for debating, whether it's British Parliamentary, Mace style debating, or any other debating format. And these tips are really to help you structure arguments, to come up with arguments, structure your debate, and ensure that you have, the strongest arguments going into a debate. So the first thing to think about when you find out the motion and you've got time to come up with your points, whether it's kind of 15 minutes, 10 minutes, or if it's an advanced motion and you've got a bit of time to think about it, is characterization. And what this means is you've got to think about who are the most important people in this debate and why. So, for example, if the motion is this house would ban people with criminal records from holding political positions, you've got to think, who is that going to affect? Okay, who are the most important actors in this debate? So if you're banning people with criminal records from holding political office, it's obviously people with criminal records who want to hold political office, but it's also people with criminal records who might want to go into politics. It's voters. It's other politicians. So you've got to think about who's going to be affected and why. And then what the next step is, who are the most important people? So for that one, perhaps you could argue that the most important people in this debate might be people who have a criminal record and want to get involved in politics but can't. Or you might say it's actually the voters because there's more of them and this is going to impact on the way they think about politics, for example. So characterization is really, really key. And I've seen debates where somebody has identified the most important people, the most important actors in a debate and won the debate because of that, because they've been able to argue that they are the only people talking about the most important actors in the debate. Okay. The next point is to think about kind of practical points. So think about how the motion will be or has been defined. So what is the world that's been created by the government or by the proposition? So we're thinking about this idea of now, action, then. So what's the situation now? What are they doing about it? And how is it going to look, after they've done that? So in terms of practical points, how has it been defined? So in that motion I mentioned before, where you're talking about politicians not holding office if they've got criminal record, you could say, well, does this mean somebody who has any criminal record? Is it serious crimes? And if you're in the opposition, you could think of loopholes. What about somebody who's got a very, very minor record? It could be, a very minor crime. Maybe they've paid a fine for it. Does that count? Why not? Why haven't they included that? So try and think about the kind of practical points of the way that the motion has been or could be defined. So practical points. Okay, the third idea is kind of principal points, and I've kind of tagged onto this burdens. So principal points is like really explaining why something is wrong. So if you're in proposition for the motion on politicians not holding public office if they've got a criminal record, explaining why that in principle is wrong for politicians to hold public office if they've got a criminal record. It might be that we should hold people who serve public office to a higher level of accountability than others in society. If you're in opposition, you might say this is fundamentally wrong because we want everybody in society to have opportunity to serve in public office. So the principal points why something is wrong, you've got to really fully explain that. You can't just say this is wrong, you've got to say why. And then another really exciting thing to do or interesting way to think about it is burdens. What do you have to prove? So in proposition, we have to prove that people with criminal records holding public office is detrimental to society. In opposition, we've got to say the opposite. We have the burden to prove that people who've got a criminal record holding public office is actually a good thing. We have to prove that and why this matters in this debate. So that's really a really helpful one to think of when you're coming up with arguments. Okay, the fourth idea, and we're getting on to more kind of practical points here, is this idea of points of clash. And if you've done debating before, you know that summary speeches are often about points of clash, the key issues, the key themes in the debate. But it's useful to think of points of clash, even if you aren't a summary team or the summary speaker. So think of what are the main issues going to be in this debate? What are the main issues going to be? Again, if we're talking about politicians not being allowed to hold public office if they've got a criminal record, it could be about accountability. Yeah, it could be about role models. These are the kind of key themes, key issues that are going to come out. So even if you're not in summary, this can be a useful thing to think about, points of clash. Okay, finally, the last kind of practical tips for competition prep time when you've got 10, 15 minutes to prepare. Make sure you prioritize your points. So put your most important points first. If you're in a pair, the most important points should come from the first speaker. Think of nuance points, new areas if you're in the second half of the debate. If the first half of the debate is focused on politicians, say, and you're in the second half of the debate, think about the voting public. And then finally, you need to make sure that you fully explain your points. So say why. So, if you come up with a point, ask your partner why. Why is that important? And then keep on going back and forth until you kind of run out of the explanation. Really fully explain it. Okay, I hope that was useful, just giving some tips for coming up with points in debating. If you've got any comments or suggestions or queries about any of that, please leave a comment below. Thank you for listening.